failed to deliver a Christmas present to their fans, falling to the Atlanta Falcons. Was their performance concerning for their playoff chances? And what will the Colts need to do to make the postseason? Let's talk about it. Welcome to the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast presented by Fan Nation on SI.com, part of the Fans First Sports Network. My name is Andrew Moore, back from the dead after dealing with an illness on Christmas, and I'm joined here, as always, by my fellow analyst and co-host of the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast, Drake Wally. Drake, the Colts looked like they felt as terrible as I did on Christmas. I mean, just a very disappointing performance out of a team that I wrote about it last week. Preached all week that they really were honing in, trying to get focused on this next opponent, didn't want to look ahead. And man, they did not look sharp really anywhere. And it was a very, just all around a very disappointing performance. But how are you, buddy? How was your Christmas?
Christmas was good. Got to see the family, and they all got to, just ogle Aubrey, because she's a couple months from being due. So she was pretty much the center of attention. But I will say, I was really hoping that, wake up Christmas morning and just feel real good, about a Colts victory. And holy crap, one of the worst games of the year. It looked a lot like the Bengals game, only I dare say that this one's worse because you were facing a team that really had a lot of weapons. I know that the Falcons have a lot of weapons, but man, that was a team that really didn't have a lot going for them this season because of bad play calls, bad usage with certain offensive pieces, and sometimes the defense was up and down. But boy, oh boy, the guy that we had on last week, Scott Kennedy, did say, even though he predicted that the Falcons would not win this game, he said, you have to be ready, though. If they do put it all together, they're the kind of team that if they put that talent together, man, and they have everything working, they can really beat you down. And holy cow, they did it with the ground game, and Taylor Heineke played fantastic.
Yeah, it was really just, I mean, you could look at all phases and we'll dive into it here tonight, but not one phase you can really point to and say, okay, they had a really good game.
No.
All three phases pretty bad. And it's we said this a couple weeks ago that it was a wake-up call. This really needs to be the wake-up call because you have 2 games left. Colts have to win both of those games in order to make the postseason. The margin for error is now 0. Truitt getting us off to a hot start here on a Wednesday night.
Oh.
Thank you so much, Truitt, for your super chat. Really appreciate all of your support, buddy. He says, hello, men. Great family Christmas. Hope yours was too. Well, mine, I had the flu on Christmas. The wife had the flu. I think she had it worse than I did. My brother Adam had COVID. So the more Christmas hasn't even happened yet. Hopefully get that done next weekend. But true, hope your Christmas was fantastic, and thanks for joining us. We've got Chuco Colts coming on and saying 21 repeat incoming. I don't know about that because Chuco, remember 2021 Colts had aspirations to really compete and make a playoff run. This team wasn't even really supposed to be in the playoff hunt. So even if the Colts do miss out on the postseason, I think it'd be disappointing, but I don't know if it'd be as big of a collapse, certainly, as it was in 2021. But great to see you in the chat. And as others join in here tonight, we really want to have you guys just let you know how thankful we are for all of you. And if you haven't done so, please go follow us on all of our socials, like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow at Colts on FN on X, and subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. Hit that bell so you know whenever Drake and I are going live, usually every Monday and Thursday night. But with the holidays and with me being sick, you never know when we might have to change up the schedule. So make sure you're tuned in so you never miss an episode. And we're at 1,900 subscribers, saw on there today, 100 subscribers away from that 2K mark. And we've got 2 weeks to do it, guys. Really push for your friends, your family, everyone to subscribe so we can reach our goal of 2,000 subscribers before the end of the regular season. If you can't catch us live, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you listen to podcasts, we're on there as well. So make sure you subscribe, give us a 5-star review so we can reach other Colts fans just like you. So Drake, let's dive right into it, buddy. The Colts fall flat to the Falcons 29-10. And really, I saw a bunch of different reactions on the internet from don't take this too seriously, it was just a bad game, to the sky is falling in Indianapolis. So my first question to you tonight, my good friend, is what was your overall theme or your overall reaction to that game when you're watching on Christmas Eve? What did you feel after watching that performance from the Colts?
Man, at the end of the day, I love what you said earlier. So many things that I can say and want to say, but at the end of the day, it was just nobody played well. It just seemed like absolutely no phase. I mean, obviously, certain players played well in their own respective, stat lines, I guess, because we do have a Colts player of the game. We believe it or not, yes, we each have a Colts player of the game. But overall, I think Shane Steichen put it beautifully in his post-game press conference. He said, we have to look ourselves in the mirror. He's like, we got to basically ask ourselves, what the hell do we want with this season, and how are we going to build off of this absolutely brutal loss? So now, I again, you're going back to the Jacksonville game earlier, the Bengals game earlier. Those games, okay, fair, all right. They got beat badly in those games, but this one was different because this was a team that was really shaky. They were really falling apart. They were crumbling. And the Colts had an opportunity to just kick this team while they were down. Now, they put it all together, though. And I got to say, probably the worst, if I had to say the worst thing that I had to watch in this game was just the blocking, just allowing the pass rush to get to Gardner Minshew. But all in all, like you said, no real side of the ball played very good. And I think every single player can look at this game and say, holy crap, we got to improve, or else we're going to finish, these next two games with two straight losses and then finish the season with three in a row.
Yeah, that you put it really well there. And to me, just to add on to that, really it could be so summed up with two words: poor execution. Every single phase, when you talk about the offense, you talk about the defense, even some special teams portions of it, really the special teams didn't have an impact, but they did when they almost get, they had the Falcons they're at one point kicking a field goal. Young Wei Koo missed the field goal and lined up off sides, and gave the Falcons another chance, and they ended up getting 3 points. Didn't really matter at the end, but it just kind of sums up the whole situation with this Colts team last Sunday. Poor execution all the way around. Offense, not able to run the football. Really, no one was able to create anything in the passing game. Defense, the pass rush was there at times, but not often. Missed tackles after missed tackles after missed tackles, coverage breakdowns. It was just a really, really bad game all the way around. And I wrote about it late Sunday night, and it got posted on Horseshoe Huddle the Christmas morning before I succumbed to death of the stomach flu. But it was just terrible, man. I mean, Shane Steichen talked about it. We didn't execute. Gardner Minshew talked about it. We really need to make sure we're not schedule watching. These young guys think that they're going to have plenty of playoff opportunities. You never know when the next one's going to come about. And Shane, like you said, Shane Steichen said, we really need to take a hard look in the mirror and figure out what went wrong. And we have an opportunity here with 2 games remaining to go and seize this. We can't let this slip by. So just a very disappointing performance from the Colts when you thought, I think you might feel a little bit better, even if, the Colts might have lost a close game to the Atlanta Falcons, but no, they get the doors beat off of them, man. It was just not really competitive, and I didn't really feel once the Falcons went up by a couple scores or by a touchdown, I never really felt that the Colts had a chance to come back in that game.
Yeah, and I think that it was all, and we'll get into this too, but it was also, oh boy, did you miss Michael Pittman? I think that because you can't get the passing game going at all, Jonathan Taylor really wasn't very effective. Yeah, he scored a touchdown, but he averaged under 2.5 yards per carry. I mean, Atlanta knew how to stop the Colts here. Nobody else could get open. I mean, Josh Downs, he averaged like 6 yards per catch. I mean, it was just a game where they really could have used, dare I even say it, man, they could have used Zach Moss with Jonathan Taylor, and they could have used Michael Pittman big time, because it just really showed that there wasn't much to offer the Colts playmaking wise. So the Falcons were able to really capitalize on that. Plus they got Calais Campbell back. Plus they got David Onyemata. I mean, these guys really put the hurt on the Colts. And I think that it's one of those games where, hey, down the road, you can look back on it and say, hey, it might have served us really well, because the silver lining is you can learn a lot from a really humiliating loss like that on Christmas Eve when a lot of people are watching you.
Exactly. And let's the first part of this game that I want to talk about in the trenches. Drake, we really focused in on that last week about this playoff run for the Colts. And we even talked about it on one of our audio only episodes on Horseshoe Huddle Halftime, that for the Colts to really make the playoffs and make a run, it's got to be fueled by trench play on the offensive
Right.
line and defensive line. And the Atlanta Falcons simply just dominated the Colts in both of those areas. I mean, looking at the offensive line, 6 sacks allowed, and they were only able to generate 3.7 yards per carry. The defensive line, just one lone sack of Taylor Heineke, and they allowed 5.9 yards per carry on the ground. So when you are getting that beat up in pass protection, I understand Braden Smith wasn't out there, but I understand Blake Freeland had a pretty poor game, but it wasn't just Blake Freeland out there that was giving up pressures and allowing defenders to get to Gardner Minshew. And it wasn't just Blake Freeland that wasn't opening holes for Jonathan Taylor and the running backs. The offensive line in general played poor, and then as the defensive line, you really have no excuse. You had all your men out there, and you should have had a better game plan to be able to attack Taylor Heineke. Instead, the Colts got dominated on both sides of the ball and in the trenches, so it's no wonder that they lost by 19 points on Sunday.
Yeah, and like you said, I like the fact that you look, Blake Freeland, he allowed 9 pressures. Okay, he allowed 7 hurries. I get it. He struggled. This might have been his actual worst game. Okay, I mean, I just constantly saw 73 with his arms stretched out, trying to chase the guy that just got by him. I'm
Mhm.
constantly, and usually he had his arms on the guy's back as he was smashing Gardner Minshew. By the way, got hit 11 times. That's completely unacceptable. That's not all on Freeland. Bernard Ryman got dominated at times by Calais Campbell, who is apparently playing like he is back in his prime. This guy has been in the league 16 years. He destroyed both tackles in that game. So everyone needs to look at themselves. Every offensive lineman needs to look at themselves and realize that, look, whether it's Freeland or Smith or whoever, Veld here, whoever plays right tackle in the next game, these guys are the cornerstone of the offense. Okay. Every offensive line is probably one of the most important, if not the most important part of the offense. If you can't block, you can't run. If you can't block, you can't throw. That means you can't score. Okay. That means the defense is going to start to know what you're going to do. So I'm right there with you, man. And the defensive line, that might be worse because this defense for Atlanta can really bring pressure sometimes. I mean, they've got some pretty talented guys up front, but man, nobody seemed to even be getting to Heineke. This dude was just wheeling and dealing out there. It really makes you wish that Desmond Ridder would have played, because they probably could have forced him to do something stupid with the football. But Taylor Heineke, just like he did last year, only more so this year, he put on a clinic, man. He was efficient. He made plays when he needed to. He ran the ball when he needed to. He got out of the pocket well. Give him credit, man. The Colts did not show up in the trenches defensively or offensively in that game, and you have to win with this team.
Second time in 2 years that Taylor Heineke has looked like a good starting quarterback
That's
against this
right.
Colts defense, and Gus Bradley hasn't been able to provide an answer to stop him each time. And we'll talk about Gus Bradley and this Colts defense here in a little bit, but let's talk about the quarterback on the Colts side of things, Drake Gardner Minshew. We thought this was going to be a time where if Gardner Minshew kind of just stayed calm and was able to stay smart with the football, maybe avoid Jesse Bates and AJ Terrell a little bit, he would have a pretty decent game. But when you're pressured like he was, there really wasn't an opportunity for Minshew to really get going. And yes, he had some passes that I think were definitely high. He definitely could have did some things better to help the situation. But overall, when you were under as much pressure as Minshew was, it's going to be a tough game for any quarterback. 20 of 37 for 201 yards. It was, like I said before, sacked 6 times on the day and had that interception to Jesse Bates the third. Talked about Minshew's performance, Drake. What'd you see out of number 10? And really, was there anything that you think he could have done better that would have changed the outcome of this game?
Man, I really, I mean, technically, yes. Okay. Every one of these guys could have done something better, but
Sure.
Minshew really did what he could, man. I mean, you got to think 37 pass attempts, 11 hits. Okay, you do the math on that. That's like 1 out of every 4 dropbacks. He's getting cracked in the pocket. He's getting hit, knocked down, smashed. I mean, he was just getting hit constantly, and so that wears on you. It really wears on you. You start to feel the pressure when it's not there, and he already has a problem with that. You keep hitting Gardner Minshew, he's going to throw the ball feeling ghost pressure more than he does typically, or more than we've seen him do, in past games. And so mix in the fact that you don't have Michael Pittman. Okay. Josh Downs, I get it. I do believe he'll be a wide receiver one day. I do believe he's one of the biggest steals of this draft. He is not to the point yet where he can just shoulder a receiving core. Okay. He's not. He's a slot receiver right now. Okay. And so he still led the team in catches, though. So you got to give credit to Minshew when he found the completions, because there was not a lot there. All right. And I give a lot of credit to Will Mallory. I give a lot of credit to Gylan Granson, because those two basically shouldered the entire receiving responsibility. They were 1 and 2 in receiving yards on the day. So I think that Minshew did what he could, but man, when you get sacked 6 times, you get hit 11 times, 1 out of every 3 or 4 dropbacks. What can you possibly expect, especially when Alec Pierce isn't getting open and your skill set doesn't fit? Like, everyone was like, well, Pierce sucks. Pierce didn't do this correctly. Again, Gardner Minshew's skill sets do not match Alec Pierce's skill sets. Now you're throwing in the fact that the defense gets to focus completely on Alec Pierce as the number 1 receiver. It wasn't Downs. It was Alec Pierce. Man, it was a recipe for disaster. And you were just hoping the Colts could do 2 things: protect Gardner Minshew and run the football offensively. They weren't able to do either one of those things. And you got a backup quarterback back there. You can't run. You can't protect him. He's not going to win.
And I think this is kind of, again, where we have to realize and be realistic about, number one, who Gardner Minshew is. He's a backup quarterback for a reason. He's not a guy that can elevate the team when the rest of the team is down. He's not going to be the one that leads you to a game. Sure, he can keep the offense afloat and keep things on schedule, but if the rest of the team is playing poorly around him, chances are he's probably going to play poorly as well. And number 2 here is, you also have to realize his limitations. We've seen this year that when he's pressured, he's not nearly as good. And the more he is pressured, seems like the more he has been, the worse he's played throughout the game. Yes, he was inaccurate, on some of those balls. He threw a lot of high balls to his receivers, but his receivers also didn't do him any favors either. Alec Pierce had a really crucial drop that I think if the Colts could have sustained that drive, it would have been possibly a different game, or at least kept some pressure on the Atlanta Falcons. But he really didn't receive any of the help, any much help either. So do I put this loss on Gardner Minshew? I think he had an impact on it, and I think he played a role in this loss. But Gardner Minshew was not the main reason that the Colts lost this game. And I do think that he will bounce back against the Raiders. Granted, the Colts do need to do a little bit better with some protection issues. Hopefully Braden Smith is back going up against Max Crosby. That would certainly help. But yeah, Minshew definitely played a part, but wasn't the main reason for this Colts loss. Patrick coming in here with his first super chat of the evening. Thank you so much, buddy, for all of your support. Hope you had a fantastic Christmas. Patrick, his grand idea was for me to broadcast the show live from last night from my bathroom, going through my sickness. No one wants to see that, Patrick. Nobody wants to see that, but I really appreciate you, buddy. He says Pittman increased his contract baseline by at least $5 million by doing nothing. Also convinced me they have to draft a wide receiver with the 1st or 2nd round picks. And Drake, I was going to switch it up to the running game next, but let's talk about these wide receivers before we get to the running game.
Sure.
The tight end stepped up. I mean, Gylan Granson, I thought, played his normal role. Will Mallory stepped in and had some good plays there. But the wide receivers, man, Pittman goes down, you're expecting big games out of Alec Pierce or Josh Downs, and really just nothing. You look at the stats here. Josh Downs, like you said earlier, Drake, he led the team with 6 catches for only 39 yards, 6.5 yards per catch average. Alec Pierce, 3 catches for 30 yards out of 7 targets. Josh Downs with 9 targets. So the targets were there. They just weren't coming up with them. So it does beg the question. And Patrick, this kind of got me thinking. It's had me kind of thinking all season, but especially when Pittman goes out, there is not a guy that you can turn to, at least right now. Josh Downs could turn into that. But in my opinion, you got to have another go-to wide receiver on the outside. Doesn't have to be necessarily a Marvin Harrison Jr. or a Jamar Chase, whoever, a bona fide wide receiver one. That's what Michael Pittman is there for. But you need another weapon to help take pressure off. And if Pittman does go down, there's still a guy that defenses have to game plan for. What do you think, Drake?
I agree. And you look at okay, Josh Downs, he caught 6 of 9 targets, but Alec Pierce, and I've got the man's jersey, and I still think that there is hope for this guy. It's just he had 7 targets, 3 catches. Okay, now you think, all right, the whole game plan for the defense, for the Atlanta defense, is they could just focus on Alec Pierce. On the season, he's been targeted 60 times, and he's caught 31 passes. That's not good. That's not good. You have 50%. You have a 50% catch efficiency, basically. That's just not good. Last year, 78 targets, 41 catches. 52%. Okay, so Pierce is literally a downfield threat. That is what Pierce is. I think that's just who he is. I think that he will shore up the route running a little bit here and there, especially as he gets to work with Richardson and Steichen more. But I think Pierce is a downfield threat. He needs, that guy. He needs Michael Pittman, and I absolutely agree. I don't know if it's going to be in free agency because they will have some money, or if it's going to be in the draft. But yeah, I think that you definitely showed you need pass catchers. DJ Montgomery, he's done what he could. He played a great game given the circumstances last week against the Steelers. But, he's just a guy that he got brought off the practice squad, man. Okay, this is not a guy that's going to go out there and get you probably even 4 or 5 catches. He had 2 catches for like 46 yards in that game against the Steelers. One of them he dropped in the end zone, and then he just so happened to catch the next one, which give him credit. But, I mean, holy crap, man. Yes, you need wide receiver help, and it was probably – at no point in the season has it been more glaring than this game.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we'll definitely talk about this a lot in the off season, but this game, I think, brought a lot of what the Colts need to work on in the off season. I thought it brought a lot of that to light. You're talking about still shoring up some of the offensive line, especially those depth pieces along the offensive line, getting another weapon on the outside for Anthony Richardson next year. Still, you're talking about you need to get more sure tacklers, some better guys to go up against the run on the inside, right? Because even though Grover Stewart was back, 5.9 yards per carry the Falcons had on Sunday. So Grover Stewart wasn't able to help with that. So there's definitely a lot of some more issues on this team that I think this game helped revealed, just bring better to light. So Patrick, thank you so much for your support, buddy. Great comment and great discussion here. Let's turn to that running game. Drake, Jonathan Taylor returned. We talked about it. We thought that Jonathan Taylor would have be able to run and have some opportunities. And after that first drive, I even tweeted it out. I said, you know what? Jonathan Taylor looks nice. He looks rested, and he was able to break off a couple decent runs, get in for that touchdown to give the Colts the early 7-0 lead. But then after that, all went downhill. 18 carries for just 43 yards, and that lone touchdown, just 2.4 yards per carry for Jonathan Taylor. And some of that do I put on Jonathan Taylor? Probably. I think when you're getting paid as much as Jonathan Taylor and the expectations of a Jonathan Taylor, when you're supposed to be one of the best backs in the league, you have to make some things out of nothing. But at the same time, it's really hard to make some yardage when you're getting hit at or behind the line of scrimmage like Jonathan Taylor was on a lot of those carries.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can see, I think it's a new person that I don't think I've seen this name before, but Carriage House is making good points. But I understand where Carriage House is coming from. But look, Jonathan Taylor, while the blocking did not help him, okay, and the game plan did not help him. You have no pass catchers down the field, okay? I don't care who your running back is. If you cannot pass the ball in today's NFL at all, okay, even if it's the 49ers, okay, and if it's Christian freaking McCaffrey, if you only can run the football, okay, and you're struggling on the other side of the ball as well with stopping their ground game, man, it makes things way more difficult. But I also do believe and agree with Carriage House on some things that Taylor looked like he ran into certain gaps incorrectly. And I mean, it just looked like maybe he had a little bit of rust from, I know that he had been up to speed and had just a hand injury, but he didn't play a good game, and going back to your point, you got to make something out of nothing. And yes, it is a dollar bill league. Your value is on how much you're getting paid. This guy's getting paid quite a bit of freaking money. And it was a lot of drama to get that money to him. Okay. So I think that this is, again, for Jonathan Taylor, the offensive line, and literally everybody else on that roster, this is a game where you have to look at this and say, this is rock bottom. This is the worst we can play. 10 freaking points. Yeah, you did that against Belichick, but you still won the game. Okay, you played great defensively. So it wasn't the same for this. Not often can you score 10 points and win. That's just how bad the Patriots were earlier in the year. So I think that Taylor, while he didn't get any blocking, didn't get a lot of help, he could have also played a little bit better, and he really didn't show a lot in that game. And to be fair, neither did really anybody else either. So
right. And yeah. I think because looking forward to these final two games that the Colts have against the Raiders and against the Texans, if the Colts want to ensure that they make the playoffs, they're going to need Jonathan Taylor to be at his best. He's got to be creating 4 to 5 yards per carry. And again, that's not all on Jonathan Taylor. A lot of running backs say, the running back is only as good as his offensive line in front of him. So when you give the running back praise, you also have to give the offensive line praise. When the running back deserves some blame, the offensive line also deserves some blame. They go hand in hand there.
Right.
So the blocking definitely needs to be better. The Colts definitely need to work on that. But I think Jonathan Taylor and the rest of this group, not just Jonathan Taylor, but you're talking Trey Sermon, Tyler Goodson, Zach Moss, when he returns potentially this week, those guys all have to work in unison. I think it'll be better when you have both Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss in there. Again, that 1-2 punch, and you'll be able to use them a little bit differently to not just keep things on, keep the opposing defenses on their toes. But yeah, at the same time, you really need that running game. This Colts offense needs to rely on that running game because you don't have a dynamic quarterback back there in Gardner Minshew. Minshew needs all the help that he can get because he cannot carry this team to those victories. He's just a part of the offense that can will this team to victories. So let's switch over to the defensive side of the ball here, Drake, and we got to talk about that running back, number 7, Bijan Robinson. I mean, watching him at Texas and watching what he has done this so far in his rookie season, it's hard to not be impressed because he has been phenomenal, and the Colts saw that up close and personal on Sunday. 122 total yards from the rookie running back, 72 rushing yards, 50 yards receiving, also led the team in catches with 7. And it seemed like every time he touched the ball, the Colts needed not only multiple people to get him down, but multiple chances to get him down because the Colts couldn't tackle him on the first try. And it seemed like whenever he touched the ball was in way too much space. And again, that Colts defensive line got dominated and just allowed him to get a full head of steam, reaching that second level almost every single time he touched the football.
Yeah, and one of the broadcasters, Mark Schlereth, who actually played NFL, as a guard in the NFL, mentioned that, I don't know if there's anybody in the league that's going to have, a wonderful chance at tackling Bijan Robinson in the open field one-on-one. I mean, Bijan Robinson is a highlight reel waiting to happen. Okay. And when you are already struggling with tackling, and then you got this guy in front of you, and the momentum is clearly on Atlanta's side, boy, he played absolutely out of his mind. He had 12 carries, 72 rushing yards. That's 6 yards a carry. Then he had 7 catches, okay, for 50 receiving yards, 7.1 per catch. So, man, Bijan Robinson was really the tone setter. I think that they used him as the pacemaker. He really set the tone. He set the speed of that offense and really the entire game. And so he played absolutely fantastic. And of course, so did Tyler Algier. Both these running backs together put up 210 all-purpose yards. The Falcons had 406 on the day. These two, we said, I even put it in my 5 keys piece. If you allow these two running backs to set the tone, you will not win this game. And they also did it in the receiving game with Bijan Robinson. So, man, they really did use them as like a jab and a straight. They just freaking hit the Colts in the face all day with both of those running backs. And, Algier averaged 7.7 yards a carry and had that long touchdown run. And he's basically like tackling a bowling ball. Reminds me of Maurice Jones-Drew, honestly. So again, it's I know it's a passing league, but there's certain offenses that just run, they move the ball by running the football. And with Taylor Heineke in there, not a very mobile guy like Desmond Ridder is, they were still able to get it done. And I know that you mentioned Grover Stewart. They ran a lot of outside runs too. They ran to the outside a lot and tried to seal that edge. And they just got the Colts a lot of times. And they got situations where Bijan Robinson was one-on-one. So I think that credit to the Falcons, man, but you got to play better. And I cannot stress enough, the missed tackles, that actually might be the most irritating part, because that is the number one thing you have to do as a defensive player is tackle the ball carrier first and foremost.
Yeah, and that's kind of where we get here. Is just poor execution all the way around. Missed tackles. Stats, Matt said it earlier, 23 missed tackles, and that's what stats show. It's good pull there. PFF had the Colts with 23 missed tackles against the Atlanta Falcons. That's just
disgusting.
It's unacceptable for a team that is in the middle of a playoff hunt to be going up to 23 missed tackles. And I understand that the Atlanta Falcons have weapons in Robinson, Tyler Algier, Drake London, Kyle Pitts. But you know what? If they were doing this to every other team, the Falcons wouldn't be at 7-8 right now. So the missed tackles, the coverage mishaps. Gus Bradley talked about going into the game. They had a lot of different coverages and a lot of different checks built into the game plan. So he didn't think that his defense was playing as fast as they should have. And you know what? I'm sorry, Gus Bradley. That's on you, man. That's on you. You can't be having that at this late into the season. You want your guys to go out there and play free. At this point in the season, you are what you are as a defense. Go out there, man up, play what you're good at. Have your guys going out there and playing free, not trying to overcomplicate things when you're going up against a guy in Taylor Heineke. Taylor Heineke, I'm sure he's a smart guy. He's not Tom Brady. He's not Peyton Manning. Okay, you don't need to be trying to be a chess grandmaster against a guy like Taylor Heineke.
Yeah, he's not even a starting quarterback.
Exactly. Go out there, do what you do well, so your guys can go out and play fast, not constantly be thinking, what are we going to do here? What if we check to this, what's my responsibility? And they're more thinking than going out there just playing the game of football, especially when your head communicator in the secondary, Julian Blackmon, goes down. I think that was so crucial when Blackmon went down. And this is no slight to Nick Cross. I think Nick Cross has played fantastic this season. But when Julian Blackmon went down, I think that's when you really started to see things turn for this defense in a poor way, because Julian Blackmon is so crucial to the communication aspect of this secondary and of this defense. Of course, the calls come into Zaire Franklin. He communicates it. Zaire's yelling out those communications, but Blackmon is the main guy in the secondary that's communicating to those rookie cornerbacks, to Juju Brents and Jalen Jones. He's got Rodney Thomas, who's only a second-year player. Nick Cross is only a second-year player. Julian Blackmon and Kenny Moore are those two guys that are the ones out there communicating the most. So when Blackmon goes down, it just completely messes things up. You want things to be simple so your guys are playing fast and doing what they're good at. So in my opinion, that falls on Gus Bradley just as much as it falls on the players who didn't go out there and execute the game plan on defense, because in my opinion, that was probably the worst performance I have seen from the Colts defense all season long.
Yeah, and look, I understand that there's been all sorts of up and down about Gus Bradley, but the thing that there's two things about Gus Bradley that are just, they're very well known. He doesn't bring a lot of pressure, and he really likes to sit back in zone a lot. And I'm telling you, Taylor Heineke, look, I understand he's not a starting quarterback. I understand that he's not the best of the best. Okay. He's probably not even a top 32 quarterback, but look, he's a veteran. All right. And he can go out there and he can almost kind of Brett Favre it. He can just be a gunslinger and he can play freely. If you allow pockets to open up and you just sit in zone all day and you're not aggressive, like you said, I love how you said, you are who you are, play freely, match, get your defensive players in a position where their strengths can be maximized, their potential can be heightened at the highest point. None of that happened. And look, I understand that Gus Bradley has at times been unfairly criticized, and that's true. There's also been times when he hasn't been criticized enough. I think that this game, he deserves to be criticized, and I think he is getting criticized enough. And I think that if Gus Bradley, and I'm just going to come out and say this, if he wants to keep his job, he needs to step up and he needs to absolutely prove it in these next 2 games. He needs to go out there and he needs to, I mean, you're playing Aiden O'Connell, dude. Okay. There's a chance you're not playing CJ Stroud. Okay. I know that they just beat the Chiefs, but Aiden O'Connell had 9 completions for 62 yards. Devontae Adams had a catch for 4 yards. Okay, if you go out there against the Raiders and Aiden O'Connell drops 3 tuds on you and over 250 yards and he plays like Taylor Heineke did, boy, oh boy, you can almost seal it that Gus Bradley won't be back. That's my opinion, but I do think there's still a chance. I do still believe in Gus Bradley to an extent, and clearly Shane Steichen trusted Gus Bradley. He didn't get rid of him. He kept him here. Like you said, though, I think that might be the worst defensive performance that Gus Bradley's put on this season, though, without question.
And it's not like Gus Bradley is a lock to be here next year. You know,
No.
Shane Steichen is evaluating Gus Bradley in this defensive performance. And Wyatt Law, the voice of reason, many times coming in here with a fantastic comment. Want to highlight this. Wyatt says Steichen will replace Gus this offseason. Accountability applies to his coaching staff as well as players. He'll want a more aggressive defense. So that's Wyatt Law's take on it. I'm not going to go that far and say that it's a foregone conclusion that Gus Bradley will be replaced this offseason by Shane Steichen, but it's certainly a possibility. You know, if this defense continues to fail late in the season, going up against quarterbacks and going up against offenses that this Colts team should be better at and should be playing better against, then absolutely. You know, it's not like Gus Bradley has built a world-beating defense with the Indianapolis Colts. Last year, the defense, when you look at it statistically, did not perform well. Yes, they kept the Colts into some games, but again, towards the end of the season, really fell off. The Colts defense this season, I understand they have some young pieces in there. Grover Stewart's suspension needs to be taken into account, but at the same time, you're still not producing and being that top flight level defense that this team will need in order to win a Super Bowl. So
That's right.
We're going to have to see what happens with all this. I definitely don't think Gus Bradley is a lock, nor would this entire defensive staff a lock to be back. One guy that I would probably say to keep is Nate Ollie, because I think Nate Ollie is a superstar in the making.
Awesome.
Hell, Nate Ollie may even get a look at defensive coordinator if Gus Bradley and the rest of the staff are gone. But we'll just have to see kind of what happens. What's at hand, though, what the Colts are focusing on these next 2 games against the Las Vegas Raiders and against the Houston Texans, both at home. Drake, like you mentioned, the Raiders are coming off a really big win against the Kansas City Chiefs. That could be kind of maybe they're starting to get a little bit hype on themselves. Could this Colts game, they're thinking, okay, we just beat the Chiefs, we can easily take on the Colts, could be a potential letdown. Rather, the Colts are beaten down, and they know that they really have to beat the Raiders in order to keep their season alive. And then obviously we'll talk about Houston in a couple weeks, but in my opinion, there's no more margin for error, Drake. Both of these are must-win games, and there's really, the Colts can't lose either one of these if they want any hope at reaching the postseason.
Yeah, and look, the real one that you need to focus on is this next one, because they did just kind of. I mean, I know it was 20-14, but you pick 6 Patrick Mahomes. It's not often that happens, man. And so I think this is a defense that's playing very inspired. Is it Antonio Pierce? Who is the
Antonio Pierce is the head coach of the Raiders? Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So this man has clearly done something in place of Josh McDaniels. Give that man a lot of credit, because that was a complete moron of a coach that he had to step in and had to reinstill life into the Raiders, and they are playing incredibly sound defensive football. So I think that that and the Texans, man, yes, if you lose one of these games, you can pretty much count the playoffs out. There is still a chance that if they win out, they still don't make the playoffs. So you basically have to win out. And now I think that after losing that Falcons game, if I'm not mistaken, are they out of control of their playoff positioning? Like, even if they win both games, isn't there still a chance that they still have to have a couple teams, 1 or 2 lose, or are they still in?
You talking about the Raiders?
Yeah, well, I'm talking about the Colts. Like, if they win both games, isn't there still a chance that they don't get into the playoffs? Aren't they out of control of their own destiny at this point?
If the Colts win both of those games, they'll be in the playoffs.
Okay.
There's a
Okay.
very slight chance, and I think it would end up being deep down within the tiebreakers. But basically, Colts win out, they will be playing the first week of the playoffs.
Very fair. Well, you know what? At the end of the day, I think that you just really got to go out there. You got to play inspired, and you got to get after Aiden O'Connell. In my opinion, two things are the most glaring weakness out of this game. There's a lot, right? But they're both defensively. The pass rush was not there. And you also just have to make tackles. You have to tackle an open field. You have to tackle an open space one-on-one. There's going to be offensive coaches that are going to get you in one-on-one situations with their offensive players, their best offensive players. So you got to make tackles, and you just cannot let that happen again in this game, especially at home. You can't lay a dud at home. You might have done it at Atlanta. You can give them a pass on that one now at this point, but you can't do this at home.
Exactly. Time to put the Atlanta loss behind them, but
That's right.
learn from it. Gardner Minshew said it this week. Learn from it and make sure that it doesn't happen again. Because if they mess up within these last two games, it's going to be very hard for them to reach the postseason. Even though expectations started out that they possibly, at least from a fan base perspective, probably wouldn't make the postseason, it would still be pretty disappointing at this point if they didn't reach the playoffs, considering how they have played pretty much the rest of the season, even with Anthony Richardson going down in week 5. So, Drake, let's look at the Colts injury report. Since it's Wednesday, we have a little better outlook on some guys here. But from Sunday, Michael Pittman Jr. obviously missed the game. Clear concussion protocol, then went back into the protocol, he self-reported more symptoms coming back on Saturday evening. So, honestly, for him, kudos to him for doing that. But it looks like, as Shane Steichen has said, he's progressing well through the protocol, was a limited participant in the walkthrough today. So you hope that he's back against the Raiders, and you hope that once he clears protocol this time, that those symptoms do not come back.
Yeah, and hey, with the way the Raiders have been playing defensively, boy, you really want Michael Pittman, because the Falcons have not been playing as hot defensively as the Raiders. I know that Jesse Bates went out there and got his 6th interception of the season. But look, man, yeah, you definitely want Michael Pittman back for that contest.
Yeah, exactly. Looking at Braden Smith, also missed with a knee injury for the 3rd week in a row, but good news on that front. He returned to practice today for the Indianapolis Colts, was a full participant in the walkthrough. So as long as things continue to progress as they are, Braden Smith looks like he could be back on Sunday against the Raiders. Zach Moss missed again with that forearm injury, was limited today, so we'll see how that turns out. Jack Anderson also missed Sunday's game with Segun Olubi. For Olubi, it was a hip. Anderson, it was an illness. And then this one hurts, Drake. Safety Julian Blackmon went down during the game against the Falcons with a shoulder injury and was placed on injured reserve, meaning he will miss the rest of the regular season. James Boyd of The Athletic did report that if the Colts do make the postseason, there is a chance Blackmon does return. So it doesn't seem like it is a long-term injury of sorts, but still, this one hurts because Blackmon was in the midst of a career year. I just got done talking about how great of a communicator he is in the back end for this Colts secondary, and it's going to be interesting to see. Nick Cross now jumps into that starting role, how this Colts defense kind of adjusts to not having Julian Blackmon out there, who has been essential to this defensive success of this team.
Yeah, and hey, he's going to finish 2023's regular season anyway. 15 games, right? All starts. Now, 88 tackles, career high. 5 tackles for loss, career high. 8 passes defended, career high. 4 interceptions, career high. Okay, this guy was playing out of his freaking mind. Those 4 interceptions were a team lead.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so boy, oh boy, Nick Cross, this is your opportunity, dude. Okay. And Julian Blackmon, dare I say it, I'm sure he's going to be re-signed. Okay. I think that they're thinking long-term that they want that trio. Rodney Thomas, I know that he's kind of like been up and down, but man, I think at the end of the day, they want Nick Cross. The idea is Nick Cross and Julian Blackmon, and maybe Rodney Thomas second kind of floats around, but boy, oh boy, Nick Cross, here you go, man. You've wanted this opportunity. You've shown some sparks this season. here you go, man. You got 2 games to show it.
Yeah, this is his opportunity, because I fully expect Julian Blackmon to be back in a Colts uniform next year. I really do. I think the Colts are going to
crazy if it didn't
they're
resign
going
him.
to place a high priority on signing Julian Blackmon. And this is why, and I want to make this clear for you guys. We'll obviously going to dive into the offseason ad nauseum when the time comes and free agency and everything like that. The Colts are going to have a lot of cap space, but a lot of that cap space is going to be eaten up by them re-signing their own guys, because you think of Michael Pittman is going to get paid. Grover Stewart is going to get paid. Kenny Moore likely back on a contract extension that's not going to be cheap. They're going to want to keep Julian Blackmon. Those 4 guys right there are going to take up a considerable amount of the cap space that they have available. So you also got to think, are they going to re-sign Gardner Minshew? Is Zach Moss a possibility? So instead of the Colts, you might think they're going to go out and sign these big free agents. A lot of it's probably going to be to try to keep those guys, especially those top 4 that I mentioned, Pittman, Stewart, Moore, and Blackmon, trying to keep those 4 guys in the building. So, but yeah, Drake, you nailed it right on the head. This is Nick Cross's opportunity to go shine, and it could lead to a starting opportunity next season as he enters his 3rd year. Let's talk about the latest Colts news and rumors here real quick, Drake. So in order to fill Blackmon's spot on the 53-man roster, the Colts added some safety depth, bringing back safety Henry Black from the Pittsburgh Steelers practice squad, signed him to the 53-man roster. And in 25 games, he hasn't really played in an NFL game since 2021, but he's got 46 tackles, an interception, 2 forced fumbles with the Green Bay Packers over a 2-year span, bringing in that safety depth. And Henry Black can also play some special teams as well.
Yeah, and hey, I know that a lot of these signings, they're very like, you just got who's that type of thing. But number one, he's played with the Colts before, and in 2021, he played in all 17 games for the Green Bay Packers. So I mean, he's seen the field, he's done a couple things, he's been there, done there type of thing, and he's kind of been, like you said, on special teams and defense. So he brings experience, and I think that it's just really shoring up that depth. Because look, like you said, Julian Blackmon's loss, God, that's huge. That's a massive loss, and you really can't replace it. You can only do the best you can. And I think that this is honestly the best move they could have made.
I think so too. So obviously it's going to be a huge loss for Blackmon. We'll see if Nick Cross can really show what he's got in that role. But Rodney Thomas the second in that free safety spot, he's also got to step it up. He has not played very well this year. That's why Nick Cross has been getting more opportunities in place of Rodney Thomas. Now it's going to be Cross and Thomas pretty much until Blackmon comes back. So Thomas has to step his game up. Otherwise, you could see defensives targeting him a lot more with that deep passing game. So our final segment of the night, you guys know the drill, Colts player of the game. And Drake, I'll be honest, I might have been in a fog dealing with my sickness, but hey, it was tough to try to pick a Colts player of the game because everybody was pretty much hot garbage against this Atlanta Falcons team. But I'm gonna let you go first, buddy. Who was your Colts player of the game from Sunday?
Yeah, you talk about any good to find, man. I wrote my 3 good, 3 bad. I was over here going, I got my 7 bad, and I got to sift out 3 of them. How the hell am I going to find any good? I'm kidding. There's always good, even in a brutal defeat. I'm going to go with EJ Speed. All right, I'm going to go with EJ Speed. EJ Speed had 13 tackles. He had a tackle for loss. He had 2 passes defended. He played all over the field. He was everywhere. He played decent in coverage. Okay. I mean, he did what he could have. And I think that he stood out. Zaire had 12 tackles as well. So those linebackers played about as well as they could. And he also did well in the run game. I just don't think that they ran the ball to his side often. I think they tried to keep it away from him. They tried to keep it away from Stewart too. So give EJ Speed a lot of credit. I think this might have even been his best career performance, and it got overshadowed by a brutal defeat. So.
Yeah, I think that's a good pick. Let's look at the chat. We've got some Will Mallory love, Drake. We all know that you love some Will Mallory. Wyatt Law going with Will Mallory. Chaz also going with Mallory, had a great snag. So Will Mallory getting some love there. And then Stats Matt going with the punter, Rigoberto Sanchez. Punters are people too. He got used a lot and seems to be back to close to what he was pre-injury. Really like that pick, stats, Matt, because I thought for all the work that Sanchez got on Sunday, he did a pretty good job punting that
He did.
football away. So I was going to go with Quiddy Pay originally. He got the sack to move to 8.5, and it was the sack that got the Colts the franchise record, the Indy franchise record for sacks in the season. But I'm going to go with the offensive side of the ball. A guy that I kind of give some grief sometimes, definitely gave grief for not getting his first touchdown. I'm going to give it to Kylan Granson because I think Kylan Granson did step up on the offensive side of the ball, tried to do what he could, 5 catches for 62 yards for the offense. And I thought that he tried to give the offense some life. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough. So for me, Kylan Granson is my player of the game. EJ Speed is Drake's. We got some Will Mallory and Rigoberto Sanchez as honorable mentions in there as well. But Drake, ultimately, the sky isn't falling for the Indianapolis Colts because while they lost to the Atlanta Falcons, the Jaguars got mollywopped by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the same can be said about the Houston Texans going up against the Cleveland Browns. So despite the loss, there is still a tie atop the AFC South standings at 8-7. Trevor Lawrence dealing with another injury, now a sprained AC joint. Ever heard of it? To his throwing shoulder, something
Never heard of that injury before.
Something Anthony Richardson knows too well. Not nearly as severe as Anthony Richardson, but now it seems like Trevor Lawrence is dealing with 3 separate injuries. Kind of sounds like Andrew Luck. So Trevor Lawrence better be careful there. They go to play the Panthers, which obviously isn't as difficult as a matchup. So we'll see if Lawrence does play there. CJ Stroud is expected back this week going up against the Tennessee Titans and the Colts with Gardner Minshew going up against the Las Vegas Raiders on Sunday, all New Year's Eve games. Gonna be fun to watch. So they're not out of it, but the Colts cannot have any more games like what happened on Sunday if they want to keep their playoff hopes alive.
Yeah, and look, I think Patrick Rye said it perfectly. Okay, there have been times where they've gotten lucky. Okay, that things have kind of fallen in the way that the Colts need because they go out there and they lay a massive egg. Well, guess what? I know the Titans are out of it too. They lost too. The AFC South lost every single one of their games. Okay, so I know that 2012 Joe Flacco, 2023 Joe Flacco's out there. Wheeling and dealing like I never thought would happen. But man, the AFC is still open. The 4, 5, 6, and 7 seed are still up for grabs. And then you've got the 8, 9, 10, and 11. Those teams are still in it too. So it's just it's crazy that there's 2 games left and it's still wide open. But man, the Colts, like Gardner Minshew said, don't schedule look. Focus on the Raiders because right now they're coming off of a very huge, momentous victory over the Kansas City Chiefs, and they did it in dramatic fashion, picking Mahomes off for 6 points. Don't take Aiden O'Connell lightly. Get after him, break the rookie, and get yourself a win at home. Get back on track.
That's all they need to do. Go out there and win. As Shane Steichen said today, we control our own destiny. And that's our show for today, guys. Really appreciate everybody tuning in on a Wednesday. No, it was a little later in the week, and I appreciate all the well wishes on X and everything to get me back to health. And thanks to Drake for being so flexible so we could still get an episode talking about this loss out to you guys. Shout out to Truett and Patrick for the super chats this evening. Really appreciate all of your support and everyone else that joined into a lively chat. It's to say the least tonight. Hopefully we're keeping cool heads. I am still monitoring that thing, so make sure you're nice to one another. But really appreciate everyone's support as we talk Colts football as well. And again, if you haven't done so, please go follow us on all of our socials, like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow at Colts on FN on X, and subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. Hit that bell so you know whenever Drake and I are going live, whenever Shad goes live with the Saddle Up Show, so you never miss an episode. And if you can't catch us live or on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you listen to podcasts, we're on there as well. So make sure you subscribe, give us a 5-star review so we can reach other Colts fans just like you. No need to be sorry, Chaz or Stats, Matt. You guys are just passionate about the team, right. and you guys have more than proven that you're respectful when commenting with other Colts fans or fans or non-fans, whatever you want to call it. So you guys keep it up. Really enjoy that you guys are both in here every single night to support us. So Drake, I know you've been writing away on horseshoehuddle.com, so go tell the people what you've written so they can go check it out on the site.
Yeah, so I broke down kind of what happened with Julian Blackmon. Then I had my 3 good, 3 bad, and the Colts' loss to the Falcons. But I'll also be releasing some a former player named Shaq Leonard's comments on the potential comments on the Colts, I guess, if you want to put it that way. And then, of course, I'm going to do my 5 keys to defeating the Raiders and getting a Colts victory, getting them back on track.
Make sure you go check those out. For me, I did write a piece after the game talking about what Shane Steichen and Gardner Minshew had to say about the loss to the Falcons, what they attributed it to, and it was pretty eye-opening what they had to say. So not only them, but some of the other leaders on the team, such as DeForest Buckner, Zaire Franklin, they both chimed in. So make sure you read that to see what this Colts team really thought about that loss. And then tomorrow I've got a piece coming out about what Shane Steichen's message to the team this week has been, and what he is focusing in on going up against a suddenly very dangerous Las Vegas Raiders team as the Colts play the Raiders on New Year's Eve this Sunday. Go follow Drake at DWalsterDrake. You can follow me at Andrew Moore NFL, and we'll be back tomorrow night, Thursday night, for our normally scheduled episode as we get you all set and preview the keys to victory for the Colts against the Raiders at Lucas Oil Stadium. So make sure to be back here 7:00 Eastern tomorrow night for more Colts football. So enjoy your evening, Colts fans, and we'll see you tomorrow night.